A defined benefit pension is often described as a gold-plated pension scheme. It's a pension scheme that will provide you with a secure income for the rest of your life. You don't need to worry about what the stock market's doing, and it doesn't usually cost that much in the way of personal contributions. But in recent years, there's been a large increase in people transferring their defined benefit pensions to a defined contribution pension, otherwise known as a personal pension. And this is to take advantage of the new pension freedom rules. Up until very recently, transfer values have been quite high because interest rates have been low. But now interest rates have increased, transfer values have fallen quite significantly. So is it still a good time to be transferring your defined benefit pension? Let's have a look. My name's Carl Roberts. I'm a regulated financial advisor. So let's just recap between the differences between a defined benefit pension and a defined contribution pension. So your defined benefit pension will provide you with a set level of income from a set retirement age. There's no pot value as such. You usually have to make projections or ask your pension provider for projections to tell you what the rate of income will be at different retirement ages. Whereas with a defined contribution pension, there is no guarantee of income. You've just got a savings pot which you need to make large amounts of contributions to, you need to invest it a certain way, and then whatever's left in the pot at retirement you can draw down on. Now, if you were to transfer a defined benefit pension to a defined contribution pension, the process usually involves you requesting a cash equivalent transfer value from the scheme. So they'll do a manual calculation and give you a figure that they're willing to provide you with for you to give up your rights to that defined benefit pension. You would then take that value and transfer it to a personal pension provider. Now, it became much more common to do this around 2015 onwards, because this is when the government at the time announced something called pension freedoms. Now, pension freedoms allowed anyone with a personal pension to effectively draw from it whatever they wanted from age 55. So this made them much more flexible because life's changing. People wanted to, if you want to retire early, you could take your pension earlier as long as you're over age 55, or if you wanted to retire later and continue working, you could delay taking your pension. It just gave you the ultimate amount of flexibility that the people with defined benefit pensions don't have, because you can't change the amount of income you get from a defined benefit pension. The only thing you can do is either take a higher tax-free cash lump sum or no lump sum at all and give yourself a higher income. But once that deal starts, you can't change it. There's no going back. So the cash equivalent transfer values that are worked out by the scheme administrators for a defined benefit scheme are linked to interest rates, and they have an inverse relationship. So if interest rates are low, the transfer values offered are usually much higher. When interest rates are high, the transfer values go down. And obviously this is what's happened recently. So up until about December 2021, average transfer values peaked at around 270,000. But as you can see more recently, they've fallen sharply. So is it still a good time to transfer? Well, based on transfer values alone, no, it's not. But that was never the sole reason why you should be transferring a defined benefit pension. There's much more to it to look at, depending on your own individual circumstances. So just going to look at a few reasons why it still might be suitable to transfer if you follow one of these scenarios. So the first reason you might still consider transferring a defined benefit pension to a defined contribution pension is because of pension flexibility, something we've already covered and looked at. That pension flexibility, meaning that you can spend what you want, draw down what you want, that suits your lifestyle at the time. So remember, a defined benefit pension is a set and forget pension. Once you set up that pension income, you can't change it. So if your lifestyle changes, you'll still continue with the same income. With a defined contribution pension, a personal pension, you can be much more flexible. So when you first retire, you're probably going to be at your fittest and healthiest. You're probably going to want to spend more doing those bucket list items, going on lots of holidays, or you could potentially draw more from your personal pension at that point And then as you age and go into your kind of 80s, 90s, you'll probably like to spend a lot less. You're not probably going to go on holidays. You're not going to have 2 cars. So you can draw less out of your pension at that stage. Whereas obviously with a defined benefit pension, what's going to happen is because there will be an inflation linked increase to the payments, you'll find you've got the most income you'll ever have from that pension at the point you're at your oldest, which is probably not going to be much use to you. So pension flexibility is still a really good reason as to why you would transfer from a defined benefit pension to a defined contribution pension. It just means that at the moment your starting pot now, that transfer value is going to be a lot lower. But it could still be that the flexibility is such a big benefit to you that it's worth doing. Okay, another good reason why you still might want to consider a transfer is if you're looking at annuities. So whilst high interest rates have been bad for transfer values, high interest rates have been good for annuity rates. So an annuity is very similar to the defined benefit pension income. You can secure an annuity and it will pay you a guaranteed income for the rest of your life. Now you might think, well, why would I swap a defined benefit for something that's very similar? The key is looking at the 2 income rates. Can you get more income, secure income from an annuity now than you can from the defined benefit scheme provider? It's worth having a look. But what you could also do is consider a transfer from a defined benefit to a defined contribution pension, and then maybe not annuitize all of it. You might want a bit of half and half. So you might annuitize half the pension fund and give you half of the secure income whilst keeping the other half flexible to meet the change in lifestyle that you'll face over the next few years. So it's worth comparing the 2. And what we have seen recently is that annuity rates have looked higher than the income offered by defined benefit pensions. Okay, another reason to still consider a transfer, and this is particularly for those people that are worried about risk. Although a defined benefit pension in theory provides you with a guaranteed income for life, this income is only guaranteed as long as the scheme remains solvent. And that usually relies on the sponsoring employer to continue pumping in contributions. So if that business or business model it runs is not really looking good for the future, there could be concerns about the funding of that particular pension scheme. And yes, there is something called the Pension Protection Fund, which could potentially take over the running of your pension scheme if the employer and the scheme goes bust. However, it's not a given that the Pension Protection Fund definitely takes over the scheme. And if they do, if there's not enough assets in there to pay out the liabilities, they will still reduce the pension income you thought you were going to receive. So they're not as guaranteed as you think. The only ones you probably could argue is guaranteed is the public sector defined benefit pension schemes, and you can't transfer those anyway. But for private sector defined benefit pension schemes, you are not in control. Whereas if you transfer the pot to a personal pension, you have all the control. You choose who the provider is, it's your money, it's invested in funds. The only chance of that scheme going bust is if you pick the wrong investment strategy or you draw down too much too soon from your fund. Okay, and the final reason that we want to talk about today as to why you still might want to consider a transfer is around the fact that interest rates could still go higher. I mean, at the time of recording, interest rates are, yes, a lot higher than they have been previously, but you could argue that they've just normalized to the long-term average. Inflation is still around, and it's deemed possible that there could be further increases to come, which is going to reduce the transfer values offered going forward. So actually, although transfer values are a lot lower than they were the last few years, they could actually be still higher than they're going to be in the future. Now, looking at a defined benefit transfer to a defined contribution pension is an incredibly complex area, and a decision should not be taken lightly. You need to spend your time thinking about this, and if your benefits are guaranteed to be worth more than £30,000, you need to take advice from a regulated advisor, and no provider will let you transfer until you've done that. Now, the pool of advisors working in this area is shrinking all the time due to the complexities involved and the compliance risks and the insurance premiums offered to these advisors. We work with a specialist team that look at defined benefit transfers day in, day out, so we can put you in touch with someone who will advise you properly in this area. So if you need any help, please get in touch. I hope you found this video useful. Please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next videos that are coming along.